29. Great is thy faithfulness, O God, my Father. There is no hope of turning with thee. Thou changest not thy compassions, they fail not. As thou hast been, thou forever will be. Great is thy faithfulness, great is thy faithfulness. Morning by morning, new mercies I see. All I have needed, thy hands have provided. Great is thy pardon for sin and the peace that endureth. Thine own dear presence to cheer and to guide. Strength for today and bright hope for tomorrow. Blessings all mine with 10,000 beside. Great is thy faithfulness, great is thy faithfulness. Morning by morning, new mercies I see. All I have needed, thy hands have provided. Great is thy faithfulness, great is thy faithfulness, great is thy faithfulness. Number 302. 302. In Christ alone my hope is found. He is my life, my strength, my song. This cornerstone, this solid ground, firm through the fiercest drought and storm. For my soul, what 414. Father God, just for today, help me walk your narrow way. Help me stand when I would fall. Give me the strength to hear your call. May my steps be worship. May my thoughts be praise. May my words bring honor to your name. May my steps be worship. May my thoughts be praise. May my words bring honor to your name. Here I am, just for today. Live in me, have your way, for my desire when this race is run is only to hear you say, well done. May my steps be worship. May my thoughts be praise. May my words bring honor to your name. May my steps be worship. May my thoughts be praise. May my words bring honor to your name. Number 581. 581. Be still my soul, the Lord is on my side. There patiently the cross of grief for pain, laid to my God to order and provide. In every 808. 808. Come we that love the Lord and never join on. Join in a song with sing the Lord. Join in a song with sing the Lord and love around the throne and love around the throne. We're marching to Zion, beautiful, beautiful Zion. We're marching upward to Zion, the beautiful city of God. Then let our songs abound and every tear be dried. We're marching through Emmanuel's ground. We're marching through Emmanuel's ground to bear the world on high, to bear the world on high. We're marching to Zion, beautiful, beautiful Zion. We're marching upward to Zion, the beautiful city of God. Have sung before prayer number 454. 454. After which Brother Chris Nelson will lead us in prayer. 454. I need the prayers of those who love me. I need the prayers of those who care. I need the help of every Christian to take God's message everywhere. He answers prayer for all of faith. Oh, he holds the future in his hand. He'll guide us safely over Jordan. Our Heavenly Father understands. He'll hold your hand when you are dying. Give strength to cross the Jordan line. He'll have you answer at the judgment. In his word you will abide. He answers prayer for all the faithful. He holds the future in his hand. He'll guide us safely over Jordan. Our Heavenly Father
Dear Father, thank you for this opportunity to come here today to worship and sing songs of praise to your name. Lord, we pray that the things we do here be according to your will. Be with those that are sick and struggling. We pray for healing for them, Lord. And bring back the sins again. Be with us and protect us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
The reading this morning will be from Matthew chapter 7, verses 7 through 12. Ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be opened to you. For everyone who asks receives. He who seeks finds. And to him who knocks the door will be opened. Which of you, if his son asks for bread, will give him a stone? Or if he asks for a fish, will give him a snake? If you then, though you are evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father in heaven give good gifts to those who ask him? So in everything, do to others what you would have them do to you. For this sums up the law and the prophets.
This morning, as we prepare our minds to take the Lord's Supper, let's turn to number 296. 296. It's in the first verse. 296. On a hill always stood an old rugged cross, the emblem of suffering and shame. And I love that old cross, where the dearest and best for a world of lost sinners was slain. So there is the old rugged cross, with my trophies at last I lay down. I will cling to the old rugged cross, and exchange it someday for a crown. 957. 957. When my Savior calls, I will answer. When he calls for me, I will hear. When my Savior calls, I will answer. I'll be somewhere listening for my name. I'll be somewhere listening. I'll be somewhere listening. I'll be somewhere listening for my name. I'll be somewhere listening. I'll be somewhere listening. I'll be somewhere listening for my name. If my robe is white when he calls me, if my robe is white, I will hear. If my robe is white when he calls me, I'll be somewhere listening for my name. I'll be somewhere listening. I'll be somewhere listening. I'll be somewhere listening for my name. I'll be somewhere listening. I'll be somewhere listening. I'll be somewhere listening for my name. Number 853. 853.
Good morning. Good to see all of you here with us today. Isn't it pretty outside? You know, the one thing that makes me sad about fall is those beautiful, brilliant colors don't last quite as long as I would like them to. And I wish we had weeks and weeks and weeks of those brilliant colors, but we certainly live in a great part of the world to be able to enjoy 4 seasons like we do. We should be thankful for that. You've been listening to news lately? Yucky, isn't it? Oh man, isn't it yucky? You've got the news coming out of Hollywood and what's going on there. And then you have the bad news about hazing going on in colleges and even in high high schools not that far away from us, for that matter. You've got cyberbullying going on and physical bullying going on in high schools and elementary schools. You've got people of different political parties running around saying they hate everyone that's a part of another party. A lot of progress going on. Sad to hear all of that going on. This morning, Corey read to us out of the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus had another sermon as well. It's called the Sermon on the Plain. And in it, he did say some of the very same things that he said in the Sermon on the Mount. And if you didn't catch the last verse Corey read, there's the solution to all this mess that's going on around us in our country and in our world today. Jesus gave a one-sentence solution to the whole thing if we would just listen to it. In Luke 6, in verse 31, and just as you want men to do to you, you also do to them likewise. Wow. That's profound. That's deep. But think about it. All of those things I enumerated this morning would be solved if we did just what Jesus said to. One word summarizes what he said. Respect. We learn to respect each other. And yet, in our world today, that's something that's pretty much been thrown out the window. And it's something that we in the church definitely need to begin to restore. And let's realize that respect, quite honestly, just like hate, are learned attitudes. And so that takes us back to the starting point and the learning point in most people's lives, and that's the home. Parents, we've got to teach our children respect. Because believe you me, they're not going to be taught it in the schools anymore. The schools are almost running away from everything that might have the slightest bit of religious overtones to it. And so it comes back to the home again. In the long ago, Moses gave the children of Israel some insight that I think is just as timely today as it was when Moses was over. In Deuteronomy chapter 6, beginning in verse 6, he says, "In these words which I command you today shall be in your heart." All right, moms, dads, granddads, grandmoms, we need to have respect in our hearts. When we do, then we can follow through on verse 7. "And you shall teach them diligently to your children, and talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise up." We need to educate the youth of today. We need to educate them that all of these attitudes are horrible. And we need to learn to treat our fellow human beings a whole lot better than we have. Okay. Now let me say something to all of us, but especially this morning to the young people. Just because the majority of people do something, or just because the majority of people act a certain way, doesn't make it right. What makes something right or wrong is whether God has said it is right or wrong. Human standards to right and wrong are skewed in every way they possibly can be. And so, we don't need to be learning from the crowd. In fact, crowds can really, really get us in trouble. In Exodus chapter 23 and verse 2, after Moses left the Ten Commandments and he starts giving the people sundry commands, one of the things he tells them is, you shall not follow a crowd to do evil. Now let's think about how mob mentality works. Jesus enters the city of Jerusalem. There are people lining the streets. They're praising Him. They're putting palm branches in the roads for Him. They're praising God that He is coming to the city. And of course, the religious leaders are just beside themselves. Less than a week later, there's another mob crying out, crucify Him, crucify Him. That's how mob mentality can work. It can be so completely fickle that one part of the week they're praising Christ, and the next part of the week, probably some of those very people are calling for Him to be crucified. Looking at Proverbs chapter 1 and verse 10, Solomon, in teaching his son, parents, grandparents, in teaching our children, he says, my son, if sinners entice you, do not consent. Scott, a few years ago, we had a program going on and trying to keep kids from drugs, and the program was just say no. Good program. Good program. Guess what? We need to teach kids to say no to a whole lot of things in our land today. We need to teach them that just following the crowd is not the wisest thing to do. Proverbs 12:26, Solomon goes on and he says, the righteous should choose his friends carefully, for the way of wicked leads them astray. You hang around with the wrong crowd long enough, and the wrong crowd's going to lead you to do the wrong thing. And young people, that's not just a problem you have. That's a problem adults can have as well. Young people are not the only ones that face peer pressure in our society. So do adults. And so, this is a lesson for all of us. A lesson we all need to learn from. We need to learn to follow the teaching of Jesus and treat others as we want to be treated. So, let's look at some examples. Let's start with parents. How do young people, how do older people treat their parents? Well, Paul wrote in Ephesians 6, 1 and verse 2, children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother. You know, until the last time I talked to my dad, when I talked to him, it was yes, sir, and no, sir. Jody, I hate to pick on you and Dale, but I'm going to do this morning. It's yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, with your mother. That's the way it's supposed to be. We respect our parents. They may not be perfect. My parents weren't. Connie and I weren't. There are no perfect parents. But still, when our parents are trying to guide us in the way of God, we need to wake up and listen. We need to wake up and learn, and we need to honor and respect them. And this whole idea of respect really begins at this point. There are too many so-called modern parents that want to be friends, not parents. We need to be parents first. It's okay to be friends with your kids. Okay to be friends with the grandkids. I mean, Connie and I love getting even with our folk. You know, it is one of the great pleasures of life to spoil those kids and get even with the ones we raised. It's great. It's fun. But we still realize we're grandparents. And there are things that we have to guide those children in. And the one thing we would never do is try to get them to disrespect their parents because of us. Solomon wrote in Proverbs 23 and verse 22, "Listen to your father who begot you, and do not despise your mother when she is old." Now this may sound like a terrible emotional argument, and it is. But it's one you need to think about. I lost my mom at 29, I lost my dad at 31. And I can tell you, even all of these years later, I sure do wish I could sit down and talk to Mom and Dad. I sure do wish I could spend time with them. Honor your parents while you have them. Honor your parents all of your life. And that will go a whole long way in helping you learn to honor others. Well, while we're talking about the family, what about siblings? Oh, sibling rivalries have been going on a long time, haven't they? Cain and Abel had a sibling rivalry. It went to the extreme. But Cain and Abel had a sibling rivalry. What about Joseph? Those 10 loving brothers, and I hope you heard the sheer sarcasm in that. Why, they despised him so badly, they sold him into slavery, and it took them a while to finally recognize him after all of that. Leviticus 19 and verse 17, Moses told the people of his day, "You shall not hate your brother in your heart." I know growing up, my brother and I had our disagreements, and yes, we had our fights. I actually got to go to the emergency room a couple of times because I was the younger brother. But as we began to both of us mature, it got to the point that the last thing you wanted to do was do something wrong to one of us because it was going to be as if you had done something wrong to both of us. We were family. Again, I wish I had my brother to talk to. But of course, as you know, he passed away a year or so ago. So love your siblings. Stay close to your siblings. David was talking this morning about the fact that he kind of had to leave home because his wife had her siblings, and Connie said, "Well, Billy has to do the same thing. Well, my sisters come in." That's okay. That's okay. That families are close, that families enjoy one another. That's okay. And again, when we learn those kind of relationships, we learn to be able to spread that respect to others. Well, what about our husband or wife? Well, Solomon made an interesting statement in Ecclesiastes 9 and verse 9. He said, "Live joyfully with the wife whom you love all the days of your vain life, which he has given you." That sounds pretty exclusive to me. You know, when I get a credit card, there's always an expiration date on it. When I get my driver's license renewed, there's an expiration date on it. Connie and I still have our marriage license framed, and there's no expiration date on that one. Not one there. And you know why there's not an expiration date on it? Because Jesus said in Matthew 9 and verse 6, "What God has joined together, let not man separate." That means the two people that are married together don't work to separate that relationship, and no one from the outside works to separate that relationship. You know, marriage is so important in the eyes of God that it's compared to a covenant. God made covenants with human beings. He made a covenant with Noah. He made a covenant with Abraham. He made a covenant with the children of Israel. He made a covenant with us through Jesus Christ. And God in the Scriptures, especially in the book of Malachi, compares marriage to a covenant. That's how seriously God takes it. And if we respect each other as we should, we're going to take it just as seriously as God does. We're going to respect that individual to whom we're married. We're going to treat them with honor and dignity. And we're going to just stay together. Well, what about older people? When I was in junior high school, middle school they call it now, we were taught any time an adult walked into our classroom that we were to stand up in silence, just out of respect. You go to the Orient, that still happens today. But what about young people and old people today? We've lost a lot of that respect. Yet Leviticus 19 and verse 32 says, "You shall rise before the gray-headed and honor the presence of an old man." Young people, these older members that we hear different people who lead us in prayer thank God for so much, have a whole lot to teach us if we'll just be smart enough to listen to them. If we'll just be smart enough to watch them. If we'll just be smart enough to respect them. You know, one of the greatest lessons I was ever taught as a teenager on marriage was by an older couple in the congregation. Every time you saw them somewhere, they were walking, they were holding hands. If they sat down on a bench together, he put his arm around them. Everywhere they went together. And as the young people would see that, you know, we'd all kind of comment about it. Wow, they really like each other. All these years later, they really like each other. Connie and I have a very special picture that we kind of display on one of our many, many picture displays. Brother and Sister Diane, one of their anniversaries. And the way they are looking at each other is priceless. If I live that long, I hope Connie and I are looking at each other the way they looked at each other. They loved each other. They respected each other. And they would come walking into the building, hand in hand together. Young people learn to respect these older people. They've got a lot to teach you. A lot they can help you with if you'll just simply learn from them. Well, Scott, I've already picked on you once, so I'm going to pick on you again this morning. We need to learn in this country to respect authority. You know, it makes the hair stand up on the back of my neck when I hear somebody say, "I hate all whatever political party it is." Oh, that's scary. That's scary. Where have we gone wrong that people feel that way about authority in this country? Titus 3:1, remind them to be subject to rulers and authorities to obey. Wow. Remember, the Roman government is in the process of beginning to persecute Christians. And yet people like Paul and Peter will write that we're to pray for our leaders, we are to honor our leaders, we are to obey the laws of the land. They were going to persecute the church, and yet they were still taught to do so. You know, something I did in Ken's funeral, of course I made the statement early on that I thought Ken wanted to have revenge on me for being the younger brother to ask me to do his funeral. But then I also made the statement he forgot I would get the last word in. My last word was a story about Ken, and I bet Scott and anyone else that's been in law enforcement has probably thought like Ken thought. He and I were talking one day, and he said, you know, I wonder if I've accomplished anything. I wonder if I've done any good in my career. And the story I told, he and I had gone to see my mom at the hospital. He was in his police uniform, and of course I was in what I wore to teach school at the time. And this dad and a little boy came toward us, and the dad just kind of grabbed his son and looked at Ken and said, boy, you better be afraid of him. He's a police officer, man. He's going to grab you and throw you in jail. Ken just knelt down, looked at the little boy, and said, son, police officers are your friends. And he started talking to that little boy. I didn't watch Ken and the little boy interact. I watched the dad trying to sink through the concrete floor because of what he had said. We need to learn to respect authority. All authority. Ecclesiastes 10 in verse 20. Do not curse the king even in your thoughts. Wow, America, hear this one. A lot of people need to wake up. Butch, do I hear an amen? Thanks, brother. Too much incendiary talking going on. You know, we still talk about one nation. Sometimes the way some people are talking, you wouldn't believe that anymore. And if we could get back to the point of learning to respect one another, oh, what a difference it would make. Well, folks, I've got some more things to say about this, but we're running out of time. So, Lord's willing, we'll pick back up on this next week. And let's think about it. Respect. Barry read a couple of interesting passages this morning. Praising God, honoring God, realizing who God is, realizing what God has done. And as we learn respect, obviously respect of God and respect of Christ is right up there at the top. Do you respect them enough to do what they ask you to do? When you sin, you rebel against them. But yet God has given us a plan by which we can go back to Him. Through Jesus, we can believe in what He did for us. That He came, He lived a perfect life, died on the cross, and rose from the dead that we might live forever and be forgiven of our sins. That we can repent of our sins and confess our faith in Him and be buried in the waters of baptism to wash away that. If we respect God as we should, we'll do that because God said do it. I remember hearing an old gentleman in a Bible class one time, and there was kind of a disagreement going on, and he turned to a passage of Scripture and he read it and he said, God said it, I believe it, that settles it. Don't we all need to feel that way? God said it, I believe it, that settles it. But if you're here today and you're an erring child of God and you need to come back, we encourage you to do that. We ask you today, if you need a response, come. while we stand and sing.
And behold,